All rise. Here is the WCA Mock Trial in session. All having business before this honorable court draw near. Give attention and you shall be heard. The Honorable Robert Parker will proceed.
You can say you may be seated.
You may be seated.
Thank you everyone for being here. The matter before the court today is a preliminary hearing in the matter of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Charlotte Doyle. The defendant, Charlotte Doyle, has been accused of committing the crime of murder. And she's accused of intentionally killing a gentleman named Mr. Hollybrass while aboard a sailing ship called the Seahawk. Today's hearing is not a trial. Today's hearing is a preliminary hearing, so it is not to determine Mrs. Doyle's absolute guilt or innocence. The purpose of this preliminary hearing is to determine if there is enough evidence to warrant a full trial of this matter. As the jury, your task today is to determine if there is enough evidence to reasonably believe that Mrs. Doyle committed this crime. If you decide there is sufficient evidence, then this case will be scheduled for a trial. I'm going to instruct the jury at the end of the trial as to the level and sufficiency of the evidence that you need to hear. Your job right now, though, is to listen very carefully to all the testimony and all the evidence. The evidence is what you're going to hear from the witnesses who are in the witness chair. I need you to listen carefully to all of that evidence. Don't make a decision until you've heard all of the evidence. Do not discuss the case with the person next to you while it's going on. You'll have plenty of time at the end of the trial to deliberate and discuss the case. Now, the attorneys who are seated closest to you are the prosecution attorneys. They're representing the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's their job to prove to you that it is reasonable to believe that Mrs. Doyle committed this crime. And the attorneys farthest from you are the defense attorneys. It's their job to prove to you or try to convince you that Mrs. Doyle could not have committed this crime and there's not enough evidence to find that. Now, before the attorneys actually present their evidence, then I'm going to allow each side to make an opening statement. So, is the prosecution ready to begin?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. Is the defense ready to begin?
Yes, Your Honor.
Everybody stood up. Very well. That was excellent. Thank you very much. So, prosecution, you can make your opening statement.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Good morning, Judge Pfeiffer, and good morning to our audience in the courtroom. Welcome everyone to the court case Charlotte Doyle versus the state of Rhode Island. My name is Laura Morris, and I am a prosecutor representing the state of Rhode Island. Let me introduce my co-counsel, Maggie Benard, Stephen Timmer, and Nicholas Gomez. We would like to remind the jury this is a preliminary trial. A preliminary trial means that we are looking to establish a probable cause for murder. Now, jury, you're probably wondering what that means. Well, that means that this is not a murder trial. I repeat, this is not a trial for murder. The defense may try to make you believe that we are trying Miss Doyle for murder, but we are not. However, we are trying to prove that there was a possibility that she murdered a man with the name of Mr. Hollybrass. If you believe there is a possibility, no matter how small, that she may have, I repeat, may have, committed the murder of Mr. Hollybrass, we are asking you to vote to send this to a full trial, a trial for the murder of Mr. Hollybrass. We are going to prove that Miss Doyle had the opportunity, the reason, and the weapon to kill Mr. Hollybrass. Let me tell you the story of Miss Charlotte Doyle. On June 21st, she boarded a sailing ship named the Seahawk. The ship was to take her from Liverpool, England to Providence, Rhode Island. She was escorted by Mr. Grummage. We will prove that later that day, a man named Mr. Zachariah, who was sitting right over there, gave her a knife, a dirk to be exact. They became final friends. Charlotte Doyle also became friends with the captain, Captain Jaggery. He asked her to tell him everything that she had heard or saw from the sailors in exchange for protection. Later, she went to go get something for one of the sailors, and in a trunk she saw a gun and a round robin, which is a circle with names on it so you don't know who signed it first. She ran and told the captain. He rushed out and called all hands on deck, and that's when he realized they were planning a mutiny, which is a rebellion against the captain of a ship. He shot Mr. Cranick, which is a man who worked for the captain a year ago, and hid in the brig to help the sailors with the mutiny. The captain made Mr. Hollybrass whip Zachariah. The next day, she saw the sailors throw a stone hammock overboard. They said Zachariah had died from the beating. Testimony will show that Charlotte thought that Hollybrass was responsible for his death. Miss Doyle asked to join the crew, and they let her. That was Miss Doyle's way of apologizing to the rest of the crew for telling the captain of their plan and saying that she realized how nasty the captain actually was. A couple days later, they sailed into a hurricane. Charlotte was told to climb one of the masts to cut some ropes. Testimony will show that Hallbrass and Doyle were seen having an argument, holding each other fiercely by the shoulders. After that, Hallbrass was nowhere to be seen, and Miss Doyle was climbing up the rigging. She lost her footing and tripped, and then a hand grabbed her. It was Zachariah. When they reached the eye of the storm, they discovered Hallbrass's body with Charlotte's knife in his back. Captain Jagger pointed fingers at Miss Doyle as she ran. He chased after her and lost footing and plunged into the sea. Mr. Zachariah came out and explained that he was only hiding from the captain because he was afraid Captain Jagger would kill him. A few days later, they arrived safely in America. The defense might argue that there were no eyewitnesses who saw Miss Doyle kill Mr. Hallbrass. Please understand that you do not need eyewitness to prove the murder of Mr. Hallbrass. We will prove that Miss Charlotte Doyle had the motive, the means, and the weapon to have a probable cause of killing Mr. Hallbrass. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Defense like to make their opening statement?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and Your Honor. Thank you for coming on this Friday morning to hear our case. My name is Olivia Nice, and I am defending Charlotte Doyle. Let me introduce my co-counselors, Hannah Golson, Emily Duchess, and Caleb Knapp. This is a hearing today, is a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is a small trial to see if it was possible for a 13-year-old girl to commit murder of a longtime sailor, Lieutenant Hallbrass. We do not believe the prosecution has enough evidence for this case to go to trial. We ask you to hear our side of the story, and we ask you to please release Miss Doyle. The opposite team has no evidence to prove that Charlotte Doyle had motive to kill, opportunity, or the weapon to kill Lieutenant Hallbrass. Let us go back to that fateful summer of 1832. Our defendant, Charlotte Doyle, was to set sail from England to her home in Rhode Island. She boarded the Sea Hawk with the intention of spending time with a family that was making the same journey. When she arrived at the ship, the family was not present. She was placed on board to be kept under the care of Mr. Keach, second mate, and that was a mistake. As you will hear today, this 13-year-old child was knowingly allowed on board of the ship that had a large, angry sailors who had every intention of overthrowing the captain by committing murder if necessary. We call this mutiny. Unknown to Charlotte, a stowaway was hidden aboard the ship. This stowaway, by the name of Cranach, had lost his arm due to cruelty of the Captain Jaggery. Later, he would lose his life by the hand of the same cruel captain. Our witnesses will testify that Keach knew about the mutiny beforehand, but knowingly allowed innocent 13-year-old girl on board with the intention to use her to protect himself. Would you trust the testimony of such a man who would use a child? Our witnesses will testify that Charlotte was a kind and sweet child, innocent and naive. You will hear the testimony of an expert seaman on conditions which surrounded the ship during a hurricane. It is our hope that you will discover that it is impossible to cut off the top of the mast of a ship, which is 11 stories high, climb down, and kill a sailor 3 times your weight and height. You will also hear the testimony that the weapon found in the body of Hallbrass was not in Charlotte's possession the night of the murder. She had no time to commit the murder. She did not have the weapon found in his back. As far as motive, the prosecution is going to try to prove that she was angry at Hallbrass because she whipped her friend Zachariah under the orders of Captain Jaggery. This is nonsense. Charlotte was upset with Jaggery. Charlotte was also confused. She had never witnessed the horrible and cruel violence committed by Jaggery on the ship. Her only motive in protecting Zachariah was the same motive anyone would have if they saw their friend being cruelly beaten. Finally, you're going to receive information from our witnesses that there was another person on board this ship who had motive, who knew the location of the knife in question and had strength and ability to commit the crime. Far more ability than the small 13-year-old child. In our hope that through the cross-examination, you will discover that the witnesses so carelessly chosen by the prosecution are not to be trusted. These sailors who spied, lied, and were willing to kill their captain. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is our hope that you will carefully listen to our witnesses and Charlotte herself, that you will stop this case from continuing any further. Please excuse this innocent and brave young lady from having to undergo another long and extensive trial. Set Charlotte Doyle free from this nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nice. Is the prosecution ready to proceed with their witnesses?
Yes,
Okay, you can call your first witness.
We would like to call Mr. Dillingham to the stand.
Mr. Dillingham, come up to the stand. Can we do that? Wait, before you proceed, Mr. Gomez. Mr. Dillingham, I need you to stand up, and I also need anybody who's going to be testifying today to stand up. You know what you're doing? I need you to raise your right hand. Bailiff's going to swear you in.
Do you promise to tell the truth and to comply with the WCA Mock Trial middle school rule?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Well done, Mr. Bailiff. All right, you can proceed, Mr. Gomez.
Please state your name.
Mr. Dillingham,
What is your job aboard the Seahawk?
I am a shipmate.
When did you first see Charlotte Doyle?
When she boarded the ship,
What was she like?
short temper and threw tantrums.
What was her relationship with the captain?
She spied for him.
Did you see Charlotte with a knife at any time?
Yes, I did.
Do you know who gave her the knife?
Mr. Zachariah,
Alright, let's go forward to the day's meeting. On this day, what were you doing when the entire crew was called on deck?
I came with them, but I stayed to the back.
So, whose side were you on?
Either side.
Did this mutiny succeed?
No, it did not.
Was someone punished for the mutiny?
Yes, Krennic was shot, and Zachariah was whipped by Holly Brass.
What was Charlotte's response?
She glared daggers at Holly Brass and took the whip from him and hit Jaggery across the cheek.
Now let's go to the day of the hurricane. Was there lightning during this hurricane?
Yes, there was.
In your affidavit, it states that in the first flash of lightning, you saw something. What was this?
Holly Brass and Charlotte grabbing onto each other's shoulders.
Were they fighting?
Yes.
What about the flash afterwards?
I didn't see Holly Brass anywhere, and I saw Charlotte running up the rat lines.
After Charlotte came down from the rat lines, what did you see?
Her knife and Holly Brass's back.
That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross.
Did you see Krennic aboard the Seahawk?
Yes.
If you knew Krennic was aboard the ship, why did you not inform the captain yourself?
Because I was laying low.
So you're saying you let Krennic aboard the ship without telling your captain?
Yes.
You have stated that you knew there was indeed a mutiny about to take place on the Seahawk. Did you participate directly in this mutiny?
No, I did not.
Did you take up arms against this captain?
No, I did not.
In your affidavit, you state in the flash of lightning you saw Holly Brass and Doyle holding their arms against each other's shoulders. Was this not during a hurricane?
It was during the hurricane.
The boat was rocking violently during the storm, correct?
Yes.
Could they have been holding on each other for support?
Yes.
Returning to the night of the storm, can you inform us where the captain was during that storm?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Did you know where the captain was during the storm?
No, I did not.
Well, isn't the captain supposed to be the head of the ship?
Yes.
And it was during a hurricane.
Yes.
That is all, Your Honor.
Do you want to do redirect? Do you have any questions on redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, fine. Mr. Dillingham, you can step down. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You can call your next witness.
Okay, we'd like to call it Mr. Keach to the stand.
Mr. Keach.
Please state your name to the jury.
Mr. Keach,
What was your job aboard the Seahawk?
I was second mate.
What were your duties the evening Charlotte Doyle came aboard the Seahawk?
I was in charge.
Were you aware of any possible mutinies on the ship?
Yes, I was.
Can you please explain to the jury what a mutiny is?
A mutiny is when the crew tries to overthrow the captain because he is not fit for his duties.
Did you warn Miss Doyle and her adult escort, Mr. Gummidge, that this voyage would not be a safe one?
Yes, I did, but Mr. Gummidge still made it go on the ship.
Did Miss Doyle have any business with the captain?
Yes, she spied for him.
Even though she was 13, did Jaggery trust Doyle's information?
Yes, probably because she was of higher class than we were.
Okay, let me stop you for just 1 second. Jury, can you hear Mr. Keach's answers? Okay, can you back up a couple of questions for me, Ms. Minyard, and repeat those questions? And Mr. Keach, I need you to be a little bit louder because I want to make sure the jury hears your answers. You can lean forward into the microphone or you can just talk louder.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Were you aware of any possible mutinies aboard the ship?
Yes, I was.
Can you please explain to the jury what a mutiny is?
A mutiny is when the crew tries to overthrow the captain because he is not fit for his duties.
Did you warn Miss Doyle and her adult escort, Mr. Gummidge, that this voyage would not be a safe one?
Yes, I did, but he still made her go on the ship.
Did Miss Doyle have any business with the captain?
Yes, she spied for him.
Even though she was 13, did Mr. Jaggery trust Miss Doyle's information?
Yes, probably because she was of higher class than we were.
Did Miss Doyle warn the captain that there was an impending mutiny?
Yes.
How do you know this information?
Captain Jaggery told me himself.
How did the captain react when he was told that there was a possible mutiny?
He called all hands on deck and prepared himself with guns. The crew came armed and ready, and Koenig tried to overthrow the captain, but Jaggery shot him in the chest, and Koenig died. To show that there would be punishment if there would be a mutiny, he called Zachariah to 50 whip lashing.
Who carried this out? Who carried the punishment out?
Mr. Hollybrass.
How did Miss Doyle respond to these actions?
She was indescribably enraged. She ran to Hollybrass, took the whip from him, and whipped Jaggery in the face.
Okay. Let's go back to the first few days of the voyage. Did you see Miss Doyle with a knife?
Yes,
Do you know why she carried a knife?
supposedly for protection.
When did Miss Doyle become a member of the crew?
The day after Zachariah was whipped.
How did the crew respond to this?
They didn't trust her because she was spying, and then all of a sudden she wants to be with the crew.
Can you tell us what happened the night of the hurricane?
I don't know exactly because I was on the wheel, but when the hurricane cleared up, Hollybrass was dead with a knife in his back.
Whose knife was in his back?
Charlotte's.
In Miss Doyle's training to become a sailor, was there ever any use of a knife?
Yes, normally to cut the ropes.
That's all.
Thank you. We have cross.
Defense would like to save Mr. Keach for recross-examination, Your Honor.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Keach, where are you going? Have a seat. Mr. Keach, you're dismissed. Thank you. Prosecution, call your next witness.
Mr. Honor, we'd like to call out Mary Smith this day. Mary Smith.
Mary Smith. And I need questions and answers to be nice and loud so the jury way over there can hear you.
Please state your name for the jury.
Mary Smith.
What is your job?
I clean the Doyle's house.
How long have you been working for them? What does Mr. Doyle do for a living?
He owns a lot of big ships.
Did Miss Doyle talk to you about her daughter, Charlotte Doyle?
Yes.
What did she say?
She said that she went to a fancy school in England to learn how to be a proper lady, and I could tell that she was very proud of her for that. So she had us make the house look really pretty, all the maids, and we cleaned all her linens and stuff.
So I understand that her mom thought of her as a proper lady. Am I correct?
Yes.
Had you met Charlotte before she arrived home from her voyage last summer?
No, when she came home was the first time.
What was your impression of her, and what did she look like?
She was in complete shambles. Her hair was all knotty, and she had dirt all over her skin, and I realized then that she was not a proper lady.
Did she seem to match her mother's description of a proper lady?
Not even close.
So I'm taking it that she turned into an improper lady.
Yes.
Did Mr. Doyle tell you something?
Yes.
What was it?
To not tell anyone what we've seen or heard about her, because he was worried about her mental health.
Why?
Because he was worried about her mental health and gossip might spread.
What did Mr. Doyle do to Miss Doyle?
He confined her to her room.
In your affidavit, you state that you noticed some unusual behavior on the part of Charlotte. Would you please describe to the jury what behavior that was?
Every time I came into her room, I saw her drawing pictures of knives, and she would stare at her window for long hours.
Did anything happen while she was confined in her room?
Yes.
What?
She ran away.
Do you think she was capable of murder?
Yes.
Thank you.
That was a great objection, however, she already answered the question, so that's okay. I would have sustained that objection because that would have been opinion, but maybe the jury didn't hear her anyway, we're not sure. Do you have any cross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. You may be seated. Court will note that Ms. Smith looks lovely today. Do you have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we'd like to call up Captain Gomez to the stand.
Captain,
Gomez.
yes. Yes, he is. Captain Gomez.
Please state your full name and rank before the court.
WCA Gomez, Captain, United States Navy.
How long have you been a Navy commander?
Oh, me bloomin' life. That's to say, I can hardly remember a time when I wasn't associated with the sea.
Does the captain have the right to discipline his crew?
Always.
Can you please explain what a round robin is?
A round robin, the treacherous thing, a rebellious thing. It's a donut, basically. The signatures of the mutineers all around it, all cowardice. No one puts their name first, no name is last, no one is in charge. They're all there, but just as you heard a little while ago, nobody really participates.
What does this round robin lead up to?
Mutiny.
Can you please explain what a mutiny is?
Rebellion, treachery. Remember that a ship flag for a country is a piece of sovereign territory. The captain has every right to put down such things.
What are the rights of a captain during a mutiny?
Do what he needs to do to put down the mutiny.
What was punishment if a crew member was found guilty of a mutiny?
Death.
Was it common for youth to be ship helpers?
For youth to be ship helpers, yes.
What type of training did they have?
It depended on what they were going to do. On a merchantman, or a merchant ship, maybe not much. Might just come aboard because they ran away from starvation or something else. They ran to something in order to learn a skill or learn the trade of being a sailor. On a man of war, they could have been captured. Could have moved powder, fuses, that kind of thing.
What type of training did they have with a knife?
Depends again on the use. There's different kinds of knives used for different things. A midshipman would be trained in hand-to-hand combat, using a sword, swordsmanship, that kind of thing. Enlisted crew would have been trained to use sabers, hand-to-hand combat again. And everybody carries a knife, both for self-defense and to cut rigging, lines, canvas, carving, eating, everything.
Would different knives be used for different things on board a ship?
Yes.
What is a dirk?
A dirk is a small knife, as you see in the photo right there. It's used for hand-to-hand combat. It's a thrusting instrument.
Would it be different than a rigger's knife?
A rigger's knife is made of, yes, it's very different. A rigger's knife is a smaller implement. It's made of soft steel so that you can cut line with it, but also use a mallet or a fid, put it over the top of the line and hit it. That way you don't shatter the knife. A dirk would be hardened steel, meant to puncture, and only that. But it would be very brittle steel.
That is all, Your Honor.
Any cross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. You're excused, Captain Gomez. That was excellent. Court will note, court would like to be like Captain Gomez when we grow up. Prosecution have another witness?
No, Your Honor.
So the prosecution is going to rest at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
So would the defense like to call their first witness?
We'd like to call Mr. Zachariah to the stand.
Mr. Zachariah. And I just want to remind both of you, the jury's way over there, so we want to be nice and loud with questions and answers.
Please state your name before the court.
Mr. Zachariah.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a sailor. I've been sailing for 40 years, and I've been under many voyages, several voyages with Captain Jaggery.
What sort of captain was Jaggery?
Captain Jaggery, he was harsh and strict, and he ran an orderly ship.
Did you see Charlotte board the ship?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt again, but I need you to be just a little bit louder, whether you want to lean in some on the microphone or just scream. Either one's fine. Okay.
Did she have a choice as far as you can tell?
No.
Did you and the other crew members have plans to commit mutiny on the last voyage?
Yes, they did.
Why?
Well, they wanted to get revenge on Kranich because Captain Jaggery shot Kranich in the arm, and he had to get amputated.
What kind of leader was first mate Hollybrass?
He was a loyal first mate. He did everything Captain Jaggery wanted him to do. Even though Hollybrass didn't like Captain Jaggery's orders, he always did them.
What happened when you first met Charlotte?
I gave her a dirk for protection because I knew a mutiny was about to happen.
Did you like Miss Doyle?
Yes, I did.
Did she seem to like you?
At the beginning of the voyage, no, she didn't. But then at the end, when we arrived to America, she seemed to like me.
What was her personality?
She seemed to be nice, and she knew what she didn't seem to know what she was doing though.
Your Honor, may I please approach the bench?
Yes, you may. Hang on, just once. Okay. Good job. Very good. Those are super secret legal kind of things that nobody else gets to know about. It's kind of cool, but all right, you can go ahead.
Should I repeat that question?
I think you should.
Okay. What was her personality?
Well, she seemed to be a fragile child, very gentle, but she surprised me in the hurricane where she was able to climb up the mast and cut the sails.
Did you know she was fine for the captain?
No.
Let's go to the night of the storm. What were you doing?
I was helping on the deck, but I made sure I wasn't seen because I knew Captain Jaggery would do something bad.
Then what happened?
Charlotte was ordered to climb up the mast and cut the sails, but I tagged along to make sure that she didn't get hurt.
For all you can tell, how was Charlotte taking the hurricane?
She seemed to lose her focus, I guess, and when she got off the mast, she was shaking, and she had to go down to her cabin because she was feeling ill.
At any time of the hurricane that you were with her, did you see her pull a knife on Hollybrass?
No, I did not.
You say in your affidavit that you didn't think that Charlotte killed Hollybrass. Why?
Well,
Your Honor, may I approach the bench?
You may. Hold that up.
She wasn't feeling ill. She was being chased by Captain Jaggery because he accused her of murder.
Once again, I know things that you don't know. But you may proceed.
Okay. You say in your affidavit that you didn't think Charlotte killed Holly Brass. Why?
Well, first of all, during the hurricane, when the murder happened, I was with her the whole time, and I did not see her pull the knife on Holly Brass, and she didn't have the means to, even though she didn't.
Objection. That's opinion.
That is opinion. Sustained. Now, before you continue on with your answer, though, I'm just going to remind you one more time, because you kind of start loud and then you kind of get low. But I want you to almost scream these answers out.
Okay.
Almost. Okay, so you can repeat the question. He can answer it.
Okay. You say in your affidavit that you didn't think Charlotte killed Holly Brass. Why?
I was with her the whole time during the hurricane, and I did not see her pull the knife on Holly Brass.
Very good. Cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zachariah, you can step down. Thank you. Defense would like to call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, we'd like to call the expert witness to the stand.
The expert witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Who is my expert witness?
Oh, Captain Gomez.
Okay.
Sorry.
Captain Gomez, I will just remind you that you continue to be under oath.
Please state your full name and sorry for the please.
Yeah. WCA Gomez, Captain, United States Navy.
Could you please explain the height of the ship in ways that are in line with grasp?
The Seahawk was a brig larger than most. That's how Jaggery was able to sometimes beat the speed records of his fellow captains. She's 130 feet tall, 11 stories, just from the deck to the top of the main mast.
Would you
Excuse me, sorry. And I need you to be really loud because they're hearing his answers, but I'm not sure they're hearing your questions. Okay, so do not be shy about blaring this question out.
Okay. Would you rely on a 13-year-old girl to spy for you?
Objection, Your Honor. That's opinion that is irrelevant to his speciality.
To his expert testimony, that is correct. So I will sustain the objection and you can go to the next question.
What sort of person would you select for a first mate if you knew you were going on a voyage where men might rebel against you?
A man like Holly Brass, he was a large man, big, active, strong, faithful, loyal. He was known on the waterfront as a good first mate.
If you're concerned about mutiny, doesn't that mean you're worried that someone may kill you?
Yes.
In your opinion, is it possible for a 13-year girl to overpower a grown sailor and kill him?
To overpower? No. Maybe surprise, but definitely not overpower.
Is it possible to kill him?
To kill...
A full-grown sailor?
I'm sorry, what the question is it possible to kill who?
Or who to kill?
A what?
A full-grown sailor.
A full-grown sailor. Okay.
Is it possible for who to kill a full-grown sailor? 13-year-old girl? Again, she could surprise him, but I doubt that she could take him.
Describe what it's like on a ship on a hurricane. Describe what it is like on a ship during a hurricane.
Depends. For one thing, one thing that's always the same is that it's rough. It's terrible rough. You could be walking on one side of the ship and then walking on the other side of the ship in a matter of seconds. The photo that you see down there at the end, most people look at that and they think that the ship is sinking. She's not sinking. She's just riding out the little bit that's left of a storm. You see how high those waves are. The waves are way above the stern of that ship. The men that are down there on the stern of the ship are looking up 20, 30, actually I think those are 30 or 40 foot waves up above the ship on both sides. That's what it's like. That ship happens to be headed into the seas, so she's riding or she's pitching up and down. But if she turns to the seas, it'll roll the other way as well.
What are crew members usually doing during a hurricane?
Hanging on for their lives. We'll strap someone to the wheel, take in all canvas. What you see there in that photo is just a little bit of canvas down low to keep the strain off the main mast, but allow enough headway to keep the ship's head into the storm, into the seas.
Is there usually mayhem aboard the ship?
On a disorganized ship, poor discipline, there can be. But for those who maintain a stern hand, a strong fist, it's all control.
Is it possible to keep a pretty good balance during a hurricane?
It's almost impossible. You get your sea legs after a few days, but in a hurricane, it's tough.
How wide are the ropes on the sails?
How wide? The lines. The lines on the sail? It depends. There's different, on the sail itself, I don't know, that big.
Are the sails, lines easy to cut?
No, they're very difficult. They take some time. You want them to be that strong. They're very thick, they're wet, they're soft, just soggy, moving in the wind, and that's why you use something like a rigger's knife there. It's short, allows you to put a lot of pressure on the line. At the same time, it's made out of soft metal so that you can use a mallet or a fid or something else, a piece of wood, maybe even your foot to step down on it and help cut the line.
Does it take time to cut them?
Oh, yes.
That's all.
Ross? Yes, Your Honor. Could you describe the conditions during a hurricane?
Sure, like I just described, it can be pretty exciting. Other than what I just said, there can be other things going on. If the ship is holding together, it should be no issue. There is a lot of chaos. It's organized chaos. You're fighting the sea, you're fighting the ship, you're taking in lines, making sure that everything is secure. Just try to hang it all together, keep it all afloat. But once things start to fall apart, or things start to fail, the lines separate, the mast breaks, equipment breaks free, then it can be exciting.
So it's loud aboard a ship during a hurricane?
Mostly due to the winds and the seas.
So you could get away with something like stabbing somebody in the back during a hurricane, nobody would know?
Have you ever heard a man scream? That's a noise that could cut through the wind. It may not if no one was nearby, but it is a noise that someone could hear.
But could it cut through a hurricane?
Depends. Depends where it happened. Depends who's around.
What if the man was surprised?
You're asking about possibilities now. I can't say.
That is all I have.
I would have sustained that objection had you stood. Well, alas, you did not. Captain Gomez, thank you for your testimony and your opinion. Defense has another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call up Ms. Charlotte Doyle to the stand.
Charlotte Doyle. Miss Doyle, I can already tell that you're going to need to talk really loud. And the questions are nice and loud, too.
Okay. Will you please state your name for the jury?
Charlotte Doyle.
Miss Doyle, did you come to Hollywood?
No.
Let's go to the beginning of your adventure on the Seahawk. When you found out that you're going to be sailing on one of your father's ships, how did you feel?
I felt pretty safe and comfortable because my father's ship.
Who escorted you to the ship?
Mr. Gummidge.
Can you point him out in this courtroom?
Yes.
Did you and your escort, Mr. Grummage, receive any warnings not to board the ship?
Yes.
What were these warnings precisely?
Mr. Barlow and Mr. Keach told me not to ride on the ship.
How did you and your escort respond to these warnings?
I boarded the ship.
What did you feel like as a young girl left alone among these sailors?
I didn't really like it because I felt insecure with all those men.
Did you have anyone looking after you when you were left there by your escort?
Yes.
Did you meet any sailors? Anyone that you might see regularly?
I met a
Objection. That's irrelevant. What does that have to do with the first question?
I'm not sure, but it was an interesting question. So. It was a good objection, but I'm actually interested in hearing that. So I'm going to allow you to ask that question again. But I only caught half the question because I didn't hear the first part because, once again, that's a great idea. Skip the question.
After your first encounter with Mrs. Zachariah, what was your opinion on him at first?
He frightened me.
What did he say or do that frightened you?
He said he asked me to be his final friend, and he gave me a dirk.
What is a final friend?
It's the last friend you have who sews you up in your hammock and sends you off to sea when you die.
Why did Mr. Zachariah give you a knife?
He said to protect myself from the mutiny.
What was he concerned about?
The mutiny.
So Mr. Zachariah was concerned about mutiny, so he gave you a knife to protect yourself.
Correct.
Where did he tell you to put it?
Under my mattress.
Did Captain Jagger know you had the knife?
Yes, he did.
Objection, Your Honor. That's badgering the witness.
Well, it's her witness. And if she wanted to badger her witness, she could. But I don't think it is. But I think the objection you were making was on the question before that when it was a leading question and she gave her the answer. So you were just behind on one question. Very good. Good objection. Once again, just as loud as you possibly can. You could not be too loud with these questions.
Okay.
Or answers.
Okay. Did Captain Jagger know you had the knife?
Yes.
How did he know you had the knife?
I went to his cabin and I showed him.
What did he say when you saw it?
He told me to keep it and put it under my mattress.
Did any of the other crew members see you with the knife?
Yes.
Did any of the other sailors besides Zachariah know where the knife was?
No.
So Zachariah and Captain Jagger were the only ones who knew where the knife was?
Yes.
How often were you seen with the knife?
Just once or twice.
Tell the court about your relationship with the captain. In your affidavit, you state that the two of you met regularly. What was the nature of these meetings?
He asked me to be his spy, and so each time I went, I just gave him bits of information on how the crew was and what they were doing.
Why did you agree to spy for him?
He promised me protection.
When you went on an errand for one of the sailors, you stumbled upon something in the crew's quarters. Can you tell the court what you saw?
Objection. That's a leading question.
That is a leading question, sustained. You can just rephrase the question if you want.
Okay.
We know what the answer is.
I'll skip ahead.
Okay.
Let's move ahead in time. Describe for the jury the events that took place on the day of the mutiny.
Captain Jagger called all hands on deck and came to the deck with a gun. And the crew came up armed with weapons. And Captain Jagger shot Mr. Kranick in the chest and killed him. And asked for the second person in charge for the mutiny. And no one stood up, so he ordered Zachariah to have 50 lashes for Mr. Hollybrass.
After the punishment of Zachariah, did you go to talk to the captain?
Yes, I did.
What did he say to you?
I apologized for when I took the whip from Mr. Hollybrass, and when I pulled it back, it accidentally hit him in the face, so I apologized, and he said he denied my
Objection. Accident is a point of opinion.
It is, but she's giving her testimony regarding the entire scene, so I'm going to allow that. Thank you, Mr. Timmer.
What was his response? What was your response to the rejection?
I realized he was a pretty cold-hearted man.
Did you make any decisions after that?
Yes, I decided to join the crew.
Why did you decide to join the crew?
To show them that my apology was pretty sincere.
Did they let you in?
Yes.
Where did you go to stay?
In the crew's quarters.
Did you move the knife that Mr. Zachariah gave with you?
No, I didn't.
Did you keep it where you had it?
Yes, I did.
So when you moved to the crew's quarters, did you see the knife? Never mind. Did you think about revenge?
No.
Let's go to the night of the storm. Can you recount for the court what took place?
Mr. Hollybross gave me a knife and he told me to cut down the sails. And so I climbed up the mast and it was really windy and I was completely terrified.
Did you want to do it?
No.
Why?
I was really scared.
Before you got on the mast, was Hollybross still alive?
Yes, he was.
While you were up on the mast, what did you do?
I cut down the sails.
Are the sails and lines easy to cut?
No.
Did you see anybody while you were up there on the mast cutting the sails?
Yes, I saw Zachariah.
How many more questions do you have?
Just a few.
What is just a few? 7? It's all relative, but since you've reached your time, I would suggest you get to the next 2 questions that you really want to answer. And we'll let her answer those, and then that'll be it.
Okay. Were you in position of your knife during the storm?
No, I wasn't.
At any point in this storm, did you see the captain at all?
No.
That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Fresno. It was well done. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You owned a knife aboard the Seahawk, correct?
Yes.
This knife was given to you by Zachariah?
Yes, it was.
Do you consider Zachariah to be your friend?
Not at first, but now I do.
When questioned about the origin of the knife by the commanding officer of the ship, Captain Jaggery, you were not completely truthful, were you?
No, I wasn't, because I was worried Zachariah was going to harm me.
Did you tell him who gave you the knife?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I am concerned that they're hearing the answers, but they're not quite sure what your questions are, so nice and loud. You guys cannot be too loud.
When questioned about the origin of the knife by the commanding officer of the ship, Captain Jaggery, you were not completely truthful, were you?
No, I wasn't. I was worried that Zachariah would harm me if I told him.
Let's move to the day when Captain Jaggery had Zachariah punished. You grabbed a whip from the officer in charge of the punishment, did you not?
I did. It was completely on accident.
You were angry for punishing Zachariah, weren't you?
I was.
You took this whip and lashed Captain Jaggery across the face, didn't you?
Yes, but again, it was definitely by accident.
Accident was one of opinion. Okay. Was the captain's face scarred on that day?
Yes, it was.
Were you not responsible for the scar on the captain's face?
I was.
Let's move to the day of the murder. Did you and Hollybross have an argument before you climbed on the mast?
No.
If I can remind you, in your affidavit it states you and Hollybross were on deck holding each other, leading to have an argument.
I was holding on to him for balance.
But it also says you had an argument.
No, I didn't want to climb up the mast, but I wasn't very angry.
So, let's just move on. The knife and Hollybross's body was known by you, correct?
Yes, it was.
That is all.
Are you direct?
No, Your Honor.
All right, go up. Did a fine job. You may be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Court note that you look fabulous today also. Defense have any more witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
You reserve the right to do a cross-examination of Mr. Keach, and you want to do that at this point? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Keach. Keach, I will remind you again that you are still under oath.
affidavit. You said Jaggery wanted Miss Doyle aboard. Can you tell the jury why?
He wanted a witness in case there was a mutiny.
And in your affidavit, you say your warning to Miss Doyle was not a sincere warning. Is this correct?
Yes.
So you're stating that a 13-year-old girl, defenseless, helpless, young girl aboard against full-grown sailors twice her size, putting her in danger just so you could have a witness?
I didn't actually put her on a ship. I did warn her, and she refused the warning.
But it was not a sincere warning.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Now, the moment of the night of the storm, you state you saw Miss Doyle and Mr. Hollybuss pushing one to each other. Putting in that it took place during a hurricane, when the ship is walking by.
Objection, Your Honor, that's out, so I did not bring up them pointing each other's shoulders.
But it is all part of the testimony regarding the hurricane, so even though you didn't specifically address that issue, it was all within the scope of talking about the hurricane, so it really is part of, it is within the scope of cross-examination. That's an excellent objection, though. Thank you for paying attention so clearly. But you may proceed with that question.
Again, now going to the night of the storm, you state you saw Miss Doyle and Mr. Hollybuss pushing onto each other. Putting in that it took place during a hurricane, when the ship is walking violently. Winds are pushing you off balance, and waves are suffocating you from the air. Don't you think it could be possible that they could have been balancing on each other?
I suppose so.
Other than Miss Doyle's position, could you inform us where the captain was?
I don't know.
So, there was a hurricane. The ship is literally falling apart. The captain's nowhere to be seen. Who was giving orders?
First mate.
Hollygrass, the first mate, was dead during that hurricane and was not found until the eye of the storm. Who was giving orders? Remind you you are on Europe.
I can't remember.
That's all you.
The prosecution could actually do redirect because that was cross, that was reserved.
No, Your Honor.
It's a good idea. You may be excused. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are there any more witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so the defense rests their case.
Yes, sure.
All four of you rest your case. Okay, so I'm going to allow the prosecution and the defense now to make closing statements. So everything that you've heard from the witness stand is the testimony, is the evidence. What they're going to talk about now is a closing statement. It is not the evidence itself. However, they may allude to or talk about or discuss the evidence in their closing statement. And I would remind both counsel giving the closing statement to address yourselves to the jury to the extent you can. Mr. Timmer, you may proceed.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would like to thank you for coming and spending your time to this trial. I would like to thank Mr. Pfeiffer for coming and spending his trial, as well as you who are all present in the court today. I'd like to remind the jury that this is not a trial to prove whether or not Charlotte is guilty of murder. It is important that you first understand this fact. This is a preliminary trial. In other words, you only have to believe that there is a tiny, small possibility. You only have to believe this much out of the whole entire thing to vote guilty, to send this to a real trial. In this trial, we have proved that Miss Doyle owned the weapon which killed Mr. Hollybass. The knife in the body of Hollybass was owned by only one member of the crew, and that one member was Charlotte Doyle. We have proved that she had the opportunity. During the night of the hurricane, our witnesses have testified that Charlotte Doyle and Mr. Hollybass, the man who was found dead, had an argument. Sailor Dillingham has testified that he saw Charlotte and Hollybass on deck during the storm. During the first flash of lightning, he said he saw Charlotte and Hollybass grabbing and holding on to each other and arguing. After the second flash of lightning, Charlotte Doyle was seen running up the lines, but Hollybass was nowhere to be seen. We have proved that Charlotte had the motive. She watched her friend Zachariah being cruelly beaten by Mr. Hollybass. Our witnesses have testified that on that day, Charlotte Doyle lashed out in anger against Mr. Hollybass and the captain of the ship. We have also proved that Charlotte Doyle isn't an innocent little lady. She was a young lady with strong, violent emotions and a great deal of physical strength. She lied to an adult, a commanding officer of the ship. She took out a whip out of the hands of an officer and whipped the captain of the ship in the face. This alone destroys the argument of the defense. The defense is trying to trick you into believing that she was a weak little girl. Weak little girls don't give big bloody wounds to full-grown men. She was also cutting lines from the rope in the rigging, and as Mr. Gomez has testified, the ropes were this big. The weak little girl couldn't cut a rope that big. There's even some question about her mental stability, which means not everybody thought that her brain was okay. Upon her return home, the family maid has testified that Charlotte Doyle did not appear to be mentally stable after her father had concerns about her mental health. In a real court of law, this would definitely be going to a real trial. The fact that Charlotte's knife was found in Holly Bass's body would be more than enough evidence to send this to a real trial. I know that some of you might not get what is going on, but trust me when I say this, you need to vote guilty so we can send this to a real trial. We have done everything we needed to prove that you can send this to a real trial. If you have any doubt, the smallest bit of doubt in your mind that she may have done this, you need to vote guilty so you can send this to a real trial. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Timmer. Defense, you may give your closing statement.
Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Thank you for giving your time and patience to this preliminary trial. We have proven to you today that not Charlotte is innocent, and that Jagger could be a victim of this murder as well. We have shown you that putting a 13-year-old little girl aboard a ship while a mutiny or violent act was planned against full-grown sailors twice her size is not unacceptable but dangerous. Put to mind the inexcusable absence of Captain Jagger while a hurricane was taking place. Who was giving orders? How did the ship even make it? This shows that this ship was very unorderly. It is irresponsible and unexplainable for the captain to be absent during the hurricane. Now take a minute to pull these puzzle pieces together. Jagger was never seen during this hurricane. He disappeared. They were not seen again until the eye of the storm when Holly Bass's body was found dead. And Jagger called out Miss Doyle of being the murderer to this full-grown sailor. While during this hurricane, Miss Doyle was accompanied by Mr. Zachariah. And from his testimony, he was with her the whole time, never did he witness her stab Mr. Hollybrass. And also put in mind that during this hurricane, only other two people that knew where this knife was under her mattress which she had left when she went to the crew was Captain Jaggery and only Zachariah, who was with Charlotte the whole time. Now, who is to say that we can trust the prosecution's witnesses? Keach, how can we trust him, who he has been lying and spying to the crew this whole time? Who's to say we can trust him now? And also with Dillingham, he has been switching sides this whole voyage. How is it possible to trust a man who can't even make up his mind? Now imagine, you are a small, frightened young girl on a ship full of grown sailors twice your size. When a hurricane comes, the wind is throwing you off, waves are suffocating you from the air, the ship is tossing and rocking, and then you're ordered to climb an 11-story mast. You're hanging, clinching on for dear life. Below you is your death if you make one tiny mistake, and that's all it would take. Would you honestly have the strength and courage? It's your first hurricane. Would you have the strength and courage to go up to a man twice your size and pull a knife to him? It is an outrageous, impossible idea to even think of. Please stop this nonsense, this sideshow circus, and let this little girl live her life rather than going through unnecessary tragedies. We hope you make the right decision and enjoy the rest of your day.
Your Honor, may we approach the bench?
I don't think it'll be necessary. I heard what you heard, and it's okay. So, thank you. But I have noted that. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you now heard all the evidence in this case, and it's your job now to deliberate and decide if the prosecution has presented enough evidence for you to reasonably believe that Ms. Doyle committed this crime. The prosecution must have convinced you by what's called a preponderance of the evidence, which means a majority of the evidence, or put another way, it would be 51% of the evidence. It does not have to be all of the evidence. And I'm going to remind you one last time, you are not deciding Mrs. Doyle's absolute guilt or innocence. You are charged with the duty of deciding if you reasonably believe that she could have committed the murder. In your deliberations, you can come to a majority decision. You do not have to come to a unanimous decision. It doesn't have to be 17-0. It can be a majority decision of all of you. I want to thank you again for paying such close attention to this case and to all the evidence presented. I'm going to release you in just a moment to discuss the case. Before we go into recess then, I just want to remind everybody, if I could have a few parents out in the hallway just to make sure that we are very quiet as students are going to the bathrooms, which again, if you go out and you go down the hall and they're to the right there in that foyer area. That second door does slam, so when you're leaving, don't let it go. Hold on to that so we don't make a whole lot of noise. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of that before we allow the jury to deliberate? Great, thank you. Proceed, Bailey.
All right.
Okay, the court is in recess.
All right.
I was over there, now I'm here. You may be seated. Before we ask for the jury's verdict, decision, again, just a couple of housekeeping things. We need to put everything back the way it was when we got here, which means I do need a couple of dads or students or someone to help me move these couches. Three of them are going to go back out into that foyer area, and then the others are going to go back in this room here. And then we do, before we leave, if you would just check your kind of pew area and then make sure we didn't leave any trash or anything on the floor or on the tables. And again, very quiet in the hallways. Once you get outside and you get away from the steps, you can go hoop and holler and do all that kind of good stuff, which would be great. But don't do it in the courtroom. And when the decision is read, don't hoop and holler either set of attorneys. Okay. So, having said that, has the jury reached a decision in this case?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
Would you hand your ballot to my bailiff, please? We, the jury, do not believe there is probable cause to try Charlotte Doyle for the crime of murder. So, Mrs. Doyle, would you stand up? Would you put your nice hat on, please? You're a free woman, you can go. There won't be a trial. That concludes this case. The court is going to be dismissed in just a second. For those who want to really know how the legal part of this works, I'll be happy to tell you after we're done.